I was standing in the lobby of Riverside Realty, clutching the pre-approval letter that had taken me 3 years to earn. 3 years of double shifts at Lincoln Elementary, skipping vacations, saying no to brunches with friends, all for this moment. My dream of owning my first home was finally within reach. The property listing had caught my eye 2 weeks earlier, a charming 2-bedroom bungalow in the Maple Heights neighborhood with a backyard big enough for the garden I'd always wanted. It was listed at $285,000, just barely within my budget if I stretched every dollar. Blake Morrison, the listing agent, had been incredibly helpful over the phone. His mother, Catherine Morrison, was co-listing the property, he'd explained. They ran a family real estate investment business together. When I'd mentioned my tight budget, Blake had an immediate solution. "My mom and I do this all the time with first-time buyers," he'd said warmly. "We can co-invest in the property with you. You put down what you can afford, we cover the rest of the down payment, and we all build equity together. Then in 2 years, you can refinance and buy us out at the appreciated value. Everybody wins." It had sounded almost too good to be true. But Blake had references. 5-star reviews online, a professional website. He'd even sent me testimonials from happy clients. Now, on this sunny Saturday afternoon, I was here for the final walkthrough before the 3 p.m. signing appointment. The open house was scheduled for 2 p.m., but Blake had invited me to come at 1:30 for a private viewing first. I walked through the front door, taking in the gleaming hardwood floors and the way afternoon light streamed through the bay windows. It was perfect, exactly what I'd imagined during all those late-night lesson planning sessions. "Maya, welcome." Blake appeared from the kitchen, all smiles in his crisp blue suit. Behind him came an elegantly dressed woman in her early 60s, her silver hair styled in a perfect bob. "This is my mother, Catherine Morrison," Blake said. "Mom, this is Maya Rivera, the teacher I told you about." Catherine's handshake was warm, her smile genuine. "Blake has told me so much about you. A 3rd-grade teacher, how wonderful. We need more dedicated educators." She glanced around the house with pride. "And this property is perfect for someone putting down roots in the community." We spent 20 minutes walking through the house. Catherine pointed out features I hadn't noticed in the listing photos. Blake showed me where they'd recently updated the plumbing. Everything seemed legitimate, professional. "Now, let's talk about the investment structure," Catherine said, settling onto the living room couch and opening a leather folder. "It's really quite simple." But before she could continue, a young woman appeared in the doorway. She was Asian, mid-20s, wearing the navy blazer of the realty company with an assistant's name tag that read Sarah Chen. "Excuse me, Mr. Morrison," she said quietly. "I have those comparable listings you requested." "Oh, just leave them on the hall table, Sarah," Blake said dismissively. Sarah nodded, but as she turned to leave, she caught my eye and held it. There was something in her expression, urgent and fearful. She glanced at Blake and Catherine, then back at me. "Actually, Miss Rivera," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tension I could see in her shoulders, "could I speak with you for just a moment? There's a disclosure form you need to initial before the signing." I looked at Blake, confused. "I thought I'd signed all the disclosures?" "Oh, this is just a new county requirement," Sarah said smoothly. "It'll only take a second. We can step into the model unit next door so we don't interrupt your conversation here." Catherine's smile tightened slightly. "I'm sure that can wait until—" "It's required before any contracts can be signed," Sarah interrupted, her tone professional but firm. "State Real Estate Board regulation." Blake frowned but nodded. "Fine. Make it quick. We have another showing at 2. I followed Sarah out of the bungalow and into the empty model unit next door. The moment the door closed, Sarah grabbed my wrist. "Don't sign anything," she whispered urgently. "This is a scam. They're going to steal everything from you." My heart stopped. "What? What are you talking about?" Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I lost $40,000 to them 2 years ago. The exact same setup, the co-investment program, the family business, all of it. It's fraud." I felt like the floor had dropped from under me. "That's impossible. Blake has reviews, references, all fake or from people who don't know they've been scammed yet," Sarah said quickly. "Listen to me. In about 20 minutes, another couple is coming for the 2 p.m. showing. Stay here." Hide in the bedroom, watch through the door. You'll see them run the exact same pitch. Why are you telling me this? Why didn't you warn them? I'm trying to build a case, Sarah said. I'm working here to gather evidence, but I need witnesses, real-time recordings. The police couldn't do anything with just my word against theirs. But if I can show the pattern, show them doing it to multiple people. Her voice broke. Please, I can't watch another person lose everything like I did. I should have walked out, gone straight to my car and called the police. But something in Sarah's eyes, the raw pain there, made me believe her. What do I do? I whispered. Just wait here. Watch. Record if you can. Then when they're done, we'll talk. Sarah left, and I positioned myself in the bedroom of the model unit, cracking the door just enough to see into the bungalow's living room through the window. I pulled out my phone and started a voice recording, my hands shaking. At 2:03 p.m., a young couple arrived. The woman was pregnant, maybe 6 months along. The man had his arm protectively around her shoulders. They looked excited, nervous, just like I had felt 20 minutes ago. Through my phone's Zoom camera, I could see Catherine's warm greeting, Blake's friendly handshake, the same tour I'd received, the same comments about the hardwood floors and updated plumbing. Then they settled on the same couch. Catherine opened the same leather folder, and word for word, almost verbatim, she began the same pitch. It's really quite simple. My son and I co-invest in the property with you. You put down what you can afford, we cover the rest of the down payment, and we all build equity together. Then in 2 years, you can refinance and buy us out at the appreciated value. The man looked interested but cautious. How does the ownership split work? Equal 3-way split, Blake said smoothly, all outlined in the partnership agreement. Your name goes on the title along with ours. You get to live here, pay the mortgage, build equity. We get the investment return when you buy us out. The pregnant woman frowned. But if we're paying the full mortgage, how is that fair? Catherine leaned forward sympathetically. Oh, honey, you're paying for the privilege of living here while building your equity. We're taking all the financial risk of the down payment. If the market crashes, we lose our investment. You just stop paying rent to a landlord and start building actual wealth. I felt sick. It sounded so reasonable when she said it like that. The couple exchanged glances. The man said, We need to think about it. Talk to a lawyer, maybe. Blake's smile didn't waver, but his tone shifted subtly. Of course, but I should mention we have 2 other interested parties. This property won't last the weekend at this price point. And honestly, by the time you schedule a lawyer, pay their fees, go through their review process, you'll have lost the opportunity and spent $500 for nothing. Catherine added gently, We have a real estate attorney on retainer who reviews all our co-investment contracts. They're completely standard. I can give you his contact information so you can call him right now if you'd like. Their attorney, I muttered to myself, still recording. Of course he'd say it was fine. The pregnant woman was wavering. I don't know. Tell you what, Blake said, pulling out his phone. Let me show you testimonials from our previous co-investment partners, people just like you who took advantage of this program. He showed them his phone. I couldn't see the screen, but I watched the couple's faces relax as they read. Were those the same testimonials he'd sent me? The signing didn't happen during that appointment. Blake was too smart for that. He let them think about it but scheduled a signing for 6 p.m. that evening. Before the other interested parties submit their offers, he'd said. After they left, I waited 10 minutes, then slipped back into the bungalow. Blake and Catherine were in the kitchen, their voices low. Too hesitant, Catherine was saying. We might need to cut our losses on this one. No, they'll sign, Blake replied. Young couple, baby on the way, desperate to nest, they'll talk themselves into it. I'll call at 4:30 and mention the other offer came in higher. They'll panic and sign. And if they don't, then we focus on the teacher. She's already emotionally committed to the house. I can see it in her eyes. She'll sign today. I backed out silently, my heart pounding. Sarah was waiting for me in the model unit. She took one look at my face and nodded grimly. You see it now. How does it work? I asked, my voice shaking. The actual scam. Sarah sat down heavily on the floor, her back against the wall. You signed the co-investment agreement. Your name goes on the title along with theirs, just like they promised. You pay the down payment you can afford, maybe 10 or 20,000. They put in the rest to make the required 20%. She took a shaky breath. Then you start paying the full mortgage. Every month, like clockwork. You think you're building equity, building your future. But after about 4 months, Catherine files for a refinance, and because she and Blake are also on the title, they can do it without your consent under the partnership agreement you signed. My stomach dropped. What does the partnership agreement say? Buried in Section 14, Paragraph C, in legal jargon that takes a lawyer to decode, it says that any co-investor can initiate a refinance for property improvement purposes, and that in the event of a refinance, ownership percentages are recalculated based on total investment to date. I don't understand. The refinance pulls out equity, Sarah explained, her voice hollow. Catherine and Blake take out a new, larger mortgage. They claim it's for renovations. The money goes into a shared account that they control. Then they recalculate ownership based on who put in what money. Suddenly, your $10,000 initial investment is only 5% of the total project cost. You go from owning 33% to owning 5%. I felt dizzy. But you're still paying the full mortgage. Exactly. And when you can't afford it anymore, when you miss payments, they foreclose, or they offer to buy you out of your 5% share for pennies on the dollar. Either way, they keep your initial investment. You're left with destroyed credit and often additional debt. Didn't you fight it? Sue them? Sarah's laugh was bitter. With what money? I'm a real estate assistant making $30,000 a year. I'd already put my entire savings into the down payment. I couldn't afford a lawyer, and the contract was ironclad. Technically legal, just morally bankrupt. So why are you still working here? Because I need evidence, Sarah said fiercely. I need to catch them in the act. Show the pattern. Prove this isn't just a bad business deal but intentional fraud. I've been documenting everything for 6 months, but I need more. I need other victims to come forward. Are there others? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a notes document. Names, dates, amounts, 12 people. 12 families who'd lost their savings. Jessica and Tom Brennan. Lost $50,000 plus their wedding fund. She was pregnant too, like that couple today. They had to move back in with her parents. Marcus Webb, single dad, lost $35,000, couldn't afford the custody lawyer he needed, lost primary custody of his daughter. Patricia Chen, 72 years old. They convinced her to do a reverse mortgage co-investment on her paid-off home. She lost the house she'd lived in for 40 years. Each name was a gut punch. Each story, a life destroyed. Why hasn't someone stopped them? I asked desperately. Because they're careful, Sarah said. The contracts are technically legal. They never explicitly lie. They just omit key information and count on people not reading the fine print or not being able to afford lawyers to interpret it. When people realize what happened, they're too broke and too ashamed to fight back. I looked at the list of names, then at my phone, still holding the recording of Blake and Catherine's pitch to the young couple. What if we could get them all together? I said slowly. All the victims. What if we could show this is a pattern, not isolated incidents? Sarah's eyes widened. The police said they needed multiple complainants with documented evidence, but when I tried to find the other victims, most wouldn't talk to me. Too embarrassed, too afraid of legal retaliation. What if they heard from someone who almost became victim number 13? I said. What if they knew they weren't alone? For the first time since I'd met her, Sarah smiled. Over the next 3 days, Sarah and I became detectives. She gave me contact information for every victim she'd documented. I called each one personally, introduced myself as someone who'd almost signed the same contract they did. The first few calls were brutal. People hung up on me, told me to leave them alone. One man shouted that I was probably working with the Morrisons to harass him further. But then I reached Jessica Brennan. You were pregnant when you signed, I said gently, 6 months along, a little girl. There was a long silence. Then, how did you know that? Because I watched them pitch the exact same deal to another pregnant couple 3 days ago. Same script, same promises. They're still doing it, Jessica. And if we don't stop them, They'll keep doing it. I heard her crying softly. I thought it was our fault. Tom and we thought we'd been stupid, naive. You weren't stupid. They're professionals. They've done this dozens of times. What can we do? We can't afford a lawyer. We already tried. We don't need to afford one, I said. We need to show the police this is systematic fraud, but I need your help. I need you to write down everything that happened, every conversation, every promise, every document, and I need you to be willing to file a formal complaint. Another pause. Then, okay, yes, what do we do? By day 4, I had 7 victims willing to come forward. Sarah found 3 more through her records. We had 10 people, representing over $380,000 in losses. Marcus Webb, the single dad, was a graphic designer. He created a timeline document showing all 10 cases with the identical pattern, the same pitch, the same contract structure, the same refinance scheme. Patricia Chen, the elderly woman, had kept meticulous records, every email, every contract, every bank statement showing where her money had gone. On day 5, we walked into the River County Police Department with a banker's box full of evidence. The detective who met us, Sergeant Michelle Torres, looked skeptical at first. Real estate fraud is usually a civil matter, she said. You'd need to sue them. This isn't a civil matter, Sarah said firmly. This is wire fraud. They're using false pretenses to obtain money. They're targeting vulnerable populations, pregnant women, single parents, elderly people on fixed incomes. I added, and I have a recording of them discussing how to manipulate the couple they pitched to last Saturday. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's not a business deal gone bad. It's calculated theft. Sergeant Torres spent an hour going through our documentation, the timeline, the nearly identical contracts, the pattern of refinances, the recordings I'd made. Finally, she looked up. This is good work, really good. Let me talk to the fraud division and the county prosecutor. If what you're showing me holds up, we might have a RICO case. RICO? Jessica asked. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, Torres explained. If we can prove this is an ongoing criminal enterprise, not just individual bad deals, we can go after all their assets, freeze their accounts, seize properties, and push for serious prison time. 2 weeks later, Blake and Catherine Morrison were arrested at their office. The charges, 15 counts of wire fraud, 9 counts of elder abuse, and racketeering. The local news picked up the story. More victims started coming forward. People who'd been too ashamed to speak up suddenly realized they weren't alone. By the end of the month, the victim count was at 23. The trial took 8 months. I'd never been in a courtroom before, but Sarah and I sat through every day of it. We watched the prosecutor lay out the timeline Marcus had created, display the contracts Patricia had saved, play the recording I'd made of Blake and Catherine discussing their manipulation tactics. The Morrisons' lawyer argued it was just aggressive business practices, that everyone had signed contracts willingly, that the refinance clause was clearly stated in the documentation. But the prosecutor brought in a contracts expert who testified that the clause was deliberately buried and worded in a way designed to be misunderstood. They showed that Catherine and Blake had specifically targeted people unlikely to afford legal review. They demonstrated the pattern of predatory behavior. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Catherine Morrison was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Blake got 8 years, with additional charges for forging documents related to the fake testimonials he'd shown clients. But the sentencing wasn't the end. The judge ordered full restitution. Every dollar taken from victims had to be repaid. The Morrisons' properties were seized and sold at auction. Their bank accounts were frozen and liquidated. Even Catherine's jewelry collection went on the auction block. 4 months after sentencing, I got a check in the mail for $11,347. Not the full amount I would have lost, because the Morrisons' assets couldn't cover every victim's losses completely. But it was enough. Jessica and Tom Brennan got $38,000. They used it as a down payment on a real house with a legitimate mortgage from a reputable bank. Their daughter Emma was 2 years old now. Marcus Webb got $27,000. He used part of it to hire the custody lawyer. He got his visitation rights restored. Patricia Chen got her house back. The refinance mortgage was voided as proceeds of fraud. She cried when the judge gave her the deed. Sarah Chen got $40,000, every penny she'd lost, but more than that, she got vindication. The prosecutor offered her a job as a victim advocate with the County Fraud Division. She quit the real estate company the same day. As for me, I did eventually buy my first home. Not the bungalow on Maple Heights, that had been part of the Morrisons' seized assets and sold to pay victim restitution, but a different house, in a different neighborhood, with a mortgage I could afford on my own. The closing was simple. Just me, my real estate agent, and my lawyer reviewing every single page of every single document. It took 3 hours. My agent kept apologizing for how long it was taking. I didn't mind one bit. On closing day, I invited everyone to my new house for a celebration. All 10 of the original victims who'd come forward, Sergeant Torres, the prosecutor, and Sarah, who'd risked everything to save people she'd never met. We stood in my empty living room, drinking sparkling cider out of paper cups, and Patricia raised a toast. To speaking up, she said. To not being ashamed. To fighting back. To trusting our instincts, Jessica added, one hand on her growing belly. She was pregnant again, and this time they'd chosen the house carefully, with 3 lawyers reviewing the contract. To strangers who become friends, Marcus said, nodding at Sarah. Sarah looked at me, her eyes bright. To Maya, who turned 20 minutes of courage into justice for 23 people. But I shook my head. To Sarah, who spent 2 years planning, documenting, and waiting for the right moment to take them down. You saved my life. We saved each other, Sarah said simply. After everyone left, I stood in my new kitchen and looked out at the backyard. It was smaller than the bungalows had been. The house needed work, the mortgage was tight, but it was mine. Honestly, completely, legally mine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Rivera, my name is Amanda. I'm working with a real estate investor named Douglas Chen who has a great co-investment opportunity. He came highly recommended, but something feels off. Can we talk? I smiled and typed back, absolutely. Can you meet tomorrow? And bring any contracts they've given you. Sarah had taught me that one person with courage could change everything, and now I was going to pay that forward. Because the best way to honor the stranger who'd saved me was to become that stranger for someone else.